stop the smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But conversely, those strong social connections are very protective. So what can we really do within the housing context to be thinking about this?
Myself, as an urbanist and as a community planner, I certainly know that social connectedness makes all the difference when we come to trying to create places in cities where we're inviting people from all over the world to come. So we need to make real moves as we are moving to address the housing affordability crisis in order to address the loneliness crisis, the social disconnectedness crisis.
Sometimes you're caught up in your silo of building co-op housing or building whatever kind of housing you're dealing, and you have to understand it's not just boxes for people to sleep in. There's systems underneath that, and the social connectedness of the theme of this symposium, I think it really hits the point. I think my biggest takeaway was the fact that we were able to get so many different people that are related to health and housing in the same space. And there's so many different perspectives that are from data to government to nonprofit to co-op housing to market rental, and I think I haven't seen that anywhere before. And we're all on the same page, and this is really exciting work.
We live in an individualistic and capitalist society, so that is true. And that has a whole lot of repercussions across health, housing, and well-being. Housing is so precarious. It is precarious for the tenants, and we hear that all the time. It is precarious for the landlords, both private and non-private, who are trying to move forward in this setting, and it is like the local governments are feeling pressure as well. So the whole issue of housing is a hot button issue where people are feeling pressure from all sides.
There's a plague of loneliness and of being isolated, and you become socially excluded from your neighbors and from society. So it's really important that we have collectives and have opportunities to reach out to each other and make sure that we're taking care of our neighbors, and that we have supports so we can have wellness and health, not just housing, but have that robust array of services to help people with wellness as they age.
Being lonely or being isolated is associated with a whole range of bad health outcomes, whether it's sort of burden of heart disease, cardiovascular disease, burden of diabetes, cancers, and of course mental health and well-being, which is why it's so important that there are initiatives and groups trying to support people who are isolated and to sort of break those those islands of loneliness and isolation.
Now we're in a crisis. Now your choices are so limited for solutions because you're just trying to put out fires rather than look at the solutions that are going to work long term for the most people. And decisions made in crisis, I don't think are ever super sustainable. And that's what we're trying to do here is work ahead of the crisis, or at least at the beginning stage of the crisis, to try to look for long-term solutions.
We're trying to apply existing research at the intersection of housing, well-being, and neighborliness. What is the driver of a high social quality of life when you're living in a high-density environment? Many things. It's not just one thing. We are getting into having enough data from enough of these housing contexts and community contexts where we can start to connect the dots and create some models.
The issues that we're discussing these 2 days, they're not just housing. There's a massive health part in it. Mental health is, I've said before, the most criminally underfunded public service in Canada. And being in the housing sector, and particularly for me as a project manager and someone who works on asset management, is let's also involve education in that, because we need workers in housing.
I think the fact that we had such a diverse group of people in this symposium compared to 4 years ago, I think it's exciting. I also leave, I suppose, a little bit frustrated that we're still talking about the same things that seem so obvious and affect all of us, and that a lot of these social issues seem to have to always come to crisis before action can be put in place or people really start to listen, rather than the proactive solutions that we all want to be looking for here. We need the actual lived experience of the people that we're talking about to advocate and speak for themselves. We need more than government, more than housing providers, more than social service connection. We need everyone together.
We are building a critical mass around the discussion of building connections in multi-unit buildings. Wonderful to see the diverse agencies represented here. And another takeaway is just how much more work we have to do to normalize and embed this conversation in our day-to-day decision-making and the work that we do. I think we need to be advocating to levels of government. I think we need to be raising awareness about the value and importance of building these connections right where people live.
By 2025, we're really thinking about how social connectedness can save lives and create resilience in a time of climate crisis, aging, massive aging demographic changes. So we're really seeing that in a poly crisis, we really, really need to think about multi-solving. So what are the ways that we can get 5 outcomes with one intervention? And we really see working on social connectedness in housing as a great multi-solver. And like they say, you never want to waste a crisis. You certainly don't want to waste a poly crisis. So that's what we're all here to talk about together.
Social connectedness is one of those things that helps keep people safe and healthy and more resilient when pressures come just through their lives or through the environment, through different circumstances that they face. Relationships is the building blocks, and so it's events like this where we get to know each other, we get to know people that we don't normally talk to, all with the shared intention of addressing social connections and this poly crisis.
Coming from a family that is not from Vancouver and not from Canada, is that we have a bit of a culture of a closed door. We don't have a culture where it's necessarily socially acceptable to walk into our neighbor's unit or knock on their door for help with something. And we don't have a culture of leaning on each other and leaning on other people to help support us.
Social connections are critical to having communities survive, adapt, and thrive in the case of all kinds of challenges and changes. But I want to take that further and really think about how we build not just social connections, but also social capital, so communities can come together to advocate for their needs in all kinds of different challenges, changes, and contexts.
I think a lot of our work for those in the health and social service sector is with folks who face multiple systemic barriers. There's this sort of diversity of interventions that are going to be needed for different people along that housing continuum. How do we build socially connected, climate resilient housing? From a public health lens, I would put so many of those issues people are working on that pathway between housing and health.
We are the grassroots. We are the boots on the ground, really bringing it hyper-locally, connecting with neighbors by knocking on their doors and bringing them together and creating those networks of mutual support and care in our buildings, city blocks, and in the neighborhood. We found that cookies around holiday season really works, or bringing everyone together for neighborly barbecue during summertime. It takes a little bit of courage, but the invitation is always welcome because we all wired for connection.
Housing policy in and of itself really needs to be shaken up a bit in order to ensure that we have a diversity of spaces available for a diversity of residents in our city. We can't all be the same.
So financial institutions play a role in terms of how they can evolve their underwriting and risk appetites such that they are seeing projects that are addressing the social infrastructure or essential infrastructure as a benefit and aligning with the needs of the community.
There's no one-size-fits-all program. You really have to be flexible in this work, listen to the residents, the neighbors, and see what would work best for that situation.
I'm inspired and excited to see the range of work already happening in this field. We just need to find ways to go deeper and to find opportunities to scale these even further.
When we're developing a new building, when you're doing a retrofit, the people who are gonna live there, or in a retrofit case already live there, they need to lead the charge. Sit down in a room with them and ask them, here's the bare bones of what we're gonna do. What do you want to see? What is going to be useful to you?
The important thing about the Hey Neighbor Collective is that it brings together all the people who are necessary in terms of making that transformational change to disrupt the status quo that we're seeing, where health and housing aren't necessarily integrated.
The City of Vancouver in February 2025 endorsed a new older person strategic framework, and that framework actually has embedded in it a strategic objective around building social connections in multi-unit residential buildings where there's a high proportion of older adults, by naming the importance of building these social connections right where seniors live.
If you do want to be more actively involved in the Hey Neighbor Collective and maybe this movement, we really encourage you to come and chat with us. And not just necessarily about financial support, but also doing the work, right? We're not an organization, we're a collective. So if you want to get more involved in doing this with us and together, then we'd be really happy to chat more about that.
The biggest takeaway for me is not to get overwhelmed, but thinking of it as we're in it for the long haul, like we have to think long term, and what is the first small step that we can do together to point us in the same direction. So what are those small wins, and that sort of accumulates over time, and it'll add up to a big impact.
We have what it takes right now to really move the dial on these issues that are so important.
Coming together with this symposium is a wonderful idea, and I hope that it continues, because I can see this growing and growing and growing and being a wonderful, wonderful thing.